Alright guys, this is a brief tutorial video showing you how to repair a broken disconnector on a KWA MP9 gas blowback machine pistol. It's a fairly common fault. Mine's developed it after about 12 months of firing on propane, and what it looks like is usually what will happen is when you pull the charging handle back and pull the trigger, you won't hear the usual click of the hammer firing, but on a normal working MP9 yeah, you get that click. So that's basically what it is. It's fairly easy to repair. All you need really are a few basic tools and the KWA part, which is part 153, and that's what the disconnector looks like. It's just a small piece of metal. It's maybe an inch long, and that's all it really is. You start off by undoing the flathead screw at the front and the top. So we'll just undo that. That just drops straight out. And the top of the MP9, if you push in the small catch at the back, the whole top section lifts off. So we'll just pull that away. Just be careful the spring doesn't fly out. And that's all it is really, that's all it looks like. So we'll just take the spring and the guide rod out, just put that inside the top receiver, and the next thing we want to do is take that spring out of the front. So we'll just use that same flathead screwdriver, just pop this guy straight out. And next thing you want to do is just push that piece in. So you'll see it's got a bit of movement on it now. Just push that in, and this little rod will just pop straight out. Comes from in there. Just put that to one side, and then this thing will slide all the way out. Just put that down. Next thing you want to do, on the front of the bottom receiver there's a little movable piece there. So if you just pull that down, simultaneously while pushing that down, push the bolt forward and up, and the whole thing will just slide out. Put that to one side. And the disconnector is actually a small piece just there. Okay, so where we want to start off is by opening this screw up here. So we'll just take that out. Screw will come out. It's a pretty small screw, followed by the small metal plate with a little L shape on it that's holding it in. So we'll just pop that out as well. Next thing we want to do is take out this whole trigger section. So that screw was basically stopping that whole trigger section from coming up, but that's what we're going to do next, because we need that to come out before we can get at the back of it. So we'll take the spring off the front here. So this small spring at the front coils in around a little plastic nub at the front. So we'll just take that off. It's a fairly straightforward job, it just comes straight off. That's the spring there, so we'll just put that to one side. What we need to do next is take out this small washer here. Once we've taken that small washer out, we can push this, hammer this little pin out, so we can take this whole section out. So the best way to do it really, it's quite finicky, but the best way to do it is get a smallish screwdriver and just pop it out. And that's what that piece looks like. So we'll just put that to one side. Next thing we want to do is give this pin a knock from, if you're looking from the front, from the left side of the frame. So we'll just try taking that pin out. So we'll just use a small punch. So you can see there we've just knocked that pin straight out, and that's the one towards the back, and luckily we haven't done too much damage to it taking it out, so that's what we want. Let's put that pin to one side. This trigger section now will lift straight out. Basically that's what that bit looks like, so we don't need that. So the next thing we want to do now is get at this whole frame section that's holding the disconnector in. Disconnector is held in by a small spring, just there. So what we want to do is unclick that spring from the disconnector, and then we'll take the frame out. There really is no easy way of doing this, so you might just have to persevere a little bit. So we just managed to free that spring there. And that's the disconnector there moving. So if you've never broken your MP9 down this far, you just need to have a bit of faith. One easy way that I've found of doing it is just pushing two really thin screwdrivers into each side of the frame. And what we're trying to do is just prise the low receiver away to allow this pin a bit of clearance so you can pull the frame out of it. What you can also do to help you along here is push these outwards a little bit, just to give you a bit of extra clearance. Obviously you don't want to damage the low receiver of your MP9, so you might need to be a bit gentle. But once you've cleared the pins from the holes that they were sat in from each side, you can put your screwdrivers away. Don't need those anymore. Just have a bit of confidence. And just pull that whole section out of there. The next bit is a little bit tricky. What we want to do is take the small washer off from here. So there's a tiny washer with a split in it. What we want to do is try and take this washer off, and that will enable us to get at the disconnector. So the best way really I can think to do it is push it from both ends with two small screwdrivers. So we'll just give that a go. Once you manage to take that washer off, it's a really small piece. That's how big it is, so you don't want to lose that, otherwise it'll give you grief when you're trying to keep the pin back in there. So that's a washer that holds that pin in place. So again, just try to keep an eye on it. The next bit just involves pushing a small section up here and putting a little sideways pressure on the disconnector and taking it out. So it might need a little bit of encouragement to come out, but that's basically what all the fuss is about, is this piece here. And that's a new disconnector in place. So put the pin in. To put the pin in correctly, the piece with the flat bit on it needs to come from the bottom up, and that will pass through the new disconnector, and then the really small washer needs to clip across the top of the pin to keep it in place. So you might be able to put this on, push it on with a fingernail. Okay, so before fully pushing in this block into the receiver, there's a small spring we can see just there dangling at the bottom. That actually needs to sit within this groove here. So the easiest way I found to do it is just to use, get it kind of half in position, so not all the way in, and if you're lucky it might just drop into place. If not, you can guide it with a screwdriver and just gently ease it in. In this case, it's just sat in itself there. That just keeps the tension in that. At this point, we just want to return this pin back into position in the second hole at the back. Just push that through. You shouldn't actually need the use of a hammer to get this in. If you do find that it's not coming through the other side, it's probably because this metal frame hasn't lined up accurately with this hole, and it can be really finicky, so just take your time and just push that through. And after that's gone in, the next thing is to return that washer in place just over the bolt. So again, this can be a little bit tricky, but the easiest thing I find here is to use a broad flathead screwdriver. So we just use that, just push the piece on. Take the screw that we took off the front, hook it on the little catch on the front of the trigger there, pull and extend it onto this small plastic nub at the front and just give it a little push down. That's all it takes. Take the small L-shaped piece, the bit with the circular indent goes facing down, and it locates right back where we took it off. Small screw back in on top of it. So now we just put the bolt assembly back. So we take the bottom piece in that position. There's a small triangular slot at the bottom. We'll just sit that onto the bottom of the outer barrel. Goes on like that. And the bolt assembly goes back in with this tall bit facing up. What we're going to do next is just give the disconnector a little push forward, which is that bit there. Otherwise the bolt actually doesn't go back in, and you can just test to make sure it's gone in okay by sliding it backward and forward. So the next thing to do is put the small metal plate back in the same way we took it out. Take the little metal nub that we took from the top. It's actually got a small indent on one side. Now that actually locates on this side of the gun, on the left side of the gun, so we'll just put that in. If you find that it doesn't go all the way down, so it should actually sit flush, but we can see it's just sat proud by maybe a couple of mil. Usually it's because the inner barrel is not all the way in, so just put your finger in the end of the outer barrel, give it a little push in, and then it'll just sit flush. So we'll put this little spring in. Next thing, put the recoil spring, the guide rod, back in position. Probably easier done with two hands. Take the screw and put the screw back in. So once you've put it all back together, the new disconnector